This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Opening half hour brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory. All with great warranties and also with great safety features. Great pre-owned inventory with the all-important Sunbury Motors guarantee. They go over every vehicle with a fine-tooth comb. Eases the buying experience. Terrific service department that backs it up every step of the way, whether it's quick lane, inspections, routine, difficult. They handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia. Routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf and online at sunburymotors.com. Very pleased to be joined by Jon Sauber from the Century Daily Times. John, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me on, Steve. Always appreciate it.
Same here. Let's start with this. I find it ironic that on the day that Taylor Battle comes back to Penn State, Yannick Niederhauser puts his name into the NBA draft with the idea that he's not going to wreck his eligibility. Because Taylor did the exact same thing in 2010. The exact same thing. Okay, that's the irony of all of this. How do you view this based on the statement he put out on Instagram, and what can he get out of this experience, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think this is, it may not seem like it on the surface, but I think this is a pretty big win for Penn State, right? Because to me, the key part of that statement is that if he doesn't go to the draft, he'll be returning to Penn State. We all know how this works now, right? He may not have been in the portal, but there were certainly teams who wanted him to be. That I think there were times when there was a chance that maybe he wasn't back at Penn State and was at a different school, and I don't think that's the case anymore. I think the biggest thing for him is learning where he stands, right, and learning what he can improve on this coming season to help himself. Because I said this at the beginning of the season when I first saw him at practice and then play a couple games. I do think he has an NBA future, and I'm certain that he has a professional future at the very least. Guys that big with the ability to stretch the floor and protect the rim and that kind of athleticism and skill, like they don't grow on trees, right? And he's a special player, I think, and I honestly think Penn State will be better off next year kind of running their offense through him at the high post, having him involved in more pick and rolls, having him be more of a primary facilitator because we know he's a good passer too. But yeah, I think this is a win for Penn State, though it may not seem like it on the surface. My kind of expectation is that he'll go through this process, find out what he needs to find out, and then in all likelihood, unless something changes, which I'm always leaving the door open to that happening, I would anticipate him being back at Penn State next year, knowing exactly where he needs to improve and helping Penn State quite a bit.
Of course. And right now he would not be projected in that all-important top 35. People also have to remember there are only 59 picks in the draft as well because the Knicks had to forfeit one. It's interesting, when Taylor Battle did this same process in 2010, Penn State fans weren't that comfortable because they weren't familiar with it. He came back, he'll be the first to tell you, all the valuable information he got that made his 2011 season special for him, and that was in part because of the feedback he got.
Yeah, and I think that is going to be a massive part of this for Yannick, right? He is, despite being very good, still pretty raw with a ton of upside. I would anticipate next year him taking a pretty big step. I would anticipate that being the case on offense and defense. I think the fouling will be something that's emphasized defensively for him, that he needs to protect the rim without fouling because he can be more than just a rim protector. He can be a deterrent, the kind of player that is near the rim and scares teams into lower efficiency shots. Those kind of long twos that defenses are looking to force offenses into taking. And I think offensively, like I said, that passing, the mobility, the potential stretch ability with him. I would anticipate him shooting more next year. I'm sure that'll be some feedback he gets. I think all of that can really ascend him to a level of player that maybe wasn't always present this season, but next year could be the consistent version of him that allows him to be, point blank, he's an all-Big Ten potential player, and I think a potential first-team all-Big Ten player. Will he get there? Yes. I don't know, but I think there is that kind of upside, and this process is going to help him potentially reach that.
Very quickly before we get to football, just so the fans understand, the key dates are April 22nd. That's the last day of the transfer portal being open, so that's 19 days. May 9th to the 11th is the G League Combine. 11 to 18 in May is the NBA Combine for the upper-level picks in Chicago. And then the last day to withdraw from the NBA draft is June 15th. So that way everybody knows what the dates are. John, you got an extended look at football practice the other day, not just 2 or 3 periods. It was rather extended. What did you see, and what caught your eye?
Yeah, we had 2 of them, which has been great, right? That's the kind of stuff you can learn from a lot about these guys when you see them go through drills, see them go through one-on-ones. The biggest thing that stood out to me over those 2 periods, last week and this week, is that Devontae Ross is kind of different than receivers that we've seen over the past couple of seasons at Penn State. I think the short area quickness was the thing that stood out to me most in drills, and it translates to when they were doing one-on-ones, he was beating guys with that quickness. I don't know that he has the long speed that maybe people will anticipate, because everyone wants to compare him to Tez Johnson of Oregon, because he also went from Troy to a Big Ten school. And, Tez didn't run as well as people thought in the 40, and I think that would probably be the case with Ross too. But I think he's one of those guys who the game speed is more important than the time speed. I think he doesn't lose a lot of that, and I think his ability to get open is going to be a big-time welcome addition for Penn State. And frankly, him and Kyron Hudson, both the 2 transfer portal additions at receiver, were impressive to me, and I think I could potentially point to a step up at receiver for Penn State. And I do think that there is, I'm not saying he's going to get there. It's 2 spring ball practices. It's not a massive viewing window, despite it being extended. It's not a full practice or anything. But I was really impressed with Ross and think he could be a number 1 receiver if everything pans out positively for him.
Any existing players from last year's roster that you think are taking a step up based on the windows you've had?
Yeah, to stick at receiver, I was really impressed with Caden Saunders, right?
Yes.
He was someone who was, dealing with an injury clearly all last season. He missed practice earlier in the year, and then he comes back to practice, and you see he's still not moving at 100%. It was, definitely something that he was dealing with for a long stretch there. And he comes out at spring ball, and he looks like himself. That kind of, I go back to the short area quickness of Ross, but with Saunders too, he was, a 5-star receiver according to some sites at a high school. He has a lot of upside. I think he could be an excellent starting slot receiver in college, and I think he has started to show some of that. And that's a big thing for Penn State too, right? Because you can praise the portal receivers all you want. They do need some of the guys that are in the room, some of the freshmen, some of the guys that are potential career Penn State guys to step up. And I think Saunders showed some of that. Luke Reynolds, another guy that has been wildly impressive. I don't think that'll surprise anyone. I think everyone's kind of expecting him to take a big step as his playing time probably takes a tick up this year. And then A.J. Harris, I wrote about this. I think he has a chance to be one of the best corners in the country, if not the best corner in the country this year. Yeah. I thought he was excellent last year. I think he's going to be one of the faces of the Penn State defense. Super competitive, physical corner who has good speed. I don't know that it's great speed, but the physicality makes up for that in some regard, and he's not getting beat by guys that are, potentially, 40 times faster than him, right? Like he's sticking with guys, and I think he's going to be one of the key points of that defense this year.
I think there are 3 guys in that secondary that jump out right away: Harris, Elliott Washington, and Zakee Wheatley. When you look at that group, if they can keep those 3 healthy, I think the dominoes fall into place elsewhere. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that, especially because the secondary will be important. James Franklin mentioned at his first spring ball presser that they're going to be base 4-2-5 more often, which I don't think is a major surprise, but it's good to have him say that on the record. And I would anticipate that fifth DB could come from either room right now, corner or safety. And frankly, the fourth DB is still a little up in the air with the second safety, whoever that may be. But having those three guys be solidified and knowing what you're getting from them is a big part of this. Jim Knowles relies on his defensive backs to do a lot. And I think he has two really, really good corners right now in A.J. Harris and Elliott Washington. Frankly, three of them, if you want to include Davian Collins, too, who I think has been impressive.
Yes.
And then Zakee Wheatley's got to be the leader at the back end now with Jalen Reed gone. And I know K.J. Winston didn't play much last year, but he's gone now, too. I think they need Wheatley to be that guy, and I think he has the upside to do it. He had a great game against Notre Dame to end his season last year, and I think he has a chance to build off that moving forward.
So I'll stay on the defensive side. Any observations in the looks you've had about Jim Knowles on the field coaching?
Yeah, I think he's fascinating, right? Like it was funny. We talked to Zane Durant, and he was asked, he's about Jim Knowles, saying essentially that he's not as loud or boisterous as Manny Diaz or Tom Allen, and Zane was essentially like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I hear him plenty, and I think when we were in there, he looks like he's analyzing, right? He's a very methodical guy. Everything I know about him from talking to people that know him well is that he's a very intelligent guy who takes data in, takes what he sees in, process it, and then makes decisions, right? Like he's very thoughtful in that regard, and I think he's using this time frame to analyze everything that's going on. I don't think I'm breaking any news here, but I think he's the best defensive coordinator in the country, right? And and when you have that guy, you kind of let him do what he needs to do to put the defense in place, and I think he's going to have a pretty big impact. I know there was some consternation over the need to improve offensively. Why spend this money defensively? Listen, it's really hard to jump from a top 5 defense to the top defense, and I think they have a chance to have the top defense in the country this coming year.
Any thoughts on the offensive line part of this to this stage? Because it looks like they've got 9 or 10 guys there. And I remember when James walked in the door, he had 5 total.
I think 5 might be generous at that point. But no, I think you're right. Like they have a legit 2 deep. I think Javen Williams kind of emerging at right tackle with Anthony Donka and Nolan Rucci not doing a lot to start spring ball has helped, and Williams will, I think he's someone that can play tackle, can play guard, is going to have versatility there. Cooper Cousins is going to have a role in this offensive line. Really impressed with his mobility at his size. He's 6'6" and moves really well when he's pulling. I think he's going to be pushing the guys on the interior too. So you have competition at several key spots, and of course Drew Shelton, Nick Dawkins, all those guys that come back that will solidify this as one of the best groups in the country. And it's very strange to come on here and talk about, all these position groups we're mentioning, I'm saying that essentially I think this can be the best group in the country. All this to say is, I wouldn't be surprised if we head into fall and Penn State's the number 1 preseason team in the country. Don't know that that's a guarantee, but I think that's a real possibility, and it's going to be anchored by, a really strong offensive line and a really strong defense.
I want to talk about the calendar for a moment. I just outlined the calendar on basketball for Yannick. But the transfer portal opens during the NCAA tournament. The football transfer portal opens, with the college football playoff going on. What does the NCAA need to think about when they put these rules and calendars together, in your opinion? And I realize saying the NCAA and thinking in the same sentence is really not right.
Yeah, I don't know that those two things usually go together all that well, but I do know that they need to work on essentially creating an actual off season, right? Like we talk about professional sports having free agency, drafts, things like that. There needs to be an actual off season for this stuff to take place, and I know it's not easy with the timing of semesters ending and beginning being different for every school, and that interfering with when the playoffs going on. And honestly, the basketball one makes a lot less sense to me. I don't understand why this is starting now. I don't know why it can't wait until the NCAA tournament's over, because semesters aren't starting right now. It's not as important with football with the timing. But I think that has to be the biggest thing. There has to be a legitimate off season, right? It can't be happening while this stuff is going on, because at the end of the day, the stuff going on is what everyone is striving for, right? Coaches, players, staff, they're striving to make the NCAA tournament. They're striving to make the playoff. And yes, those, the off-season aspect, those are tools to get there. But at the end of the day, you have to be fully focused on that. And I know that's part of doing it for the future, but not taking away from the present for coaches, for staff members is, I don't think it's helpful. I think it's part of the reason for the need for expanded staff. That's something James Franklin's talked about a lot, because you need to have people that can kind of look into these things while you're focusing on doing the main part of your job. And but you have to be thinking about the future too. But yeah, I think I don't know. I think it is. I'm not surprised that it's not working, because when does it with the NCAA? But I do think there has to be just a set off season. They need to find a way to create a window for this to happen when playing is over. And maybe with football, it's almost impossible to not have overlap with the national title game, and I would understand that. But at least past the semifinals, or move everything up so it's not interfering with the national title game. There has to be a better way to do this so it's that overlap doesn't exist to such an extreme degree.
In fact, I think you said it the perfect way. They need to have an off season. In other words, there's an off season, and in the off season, that's where you then start roster construction, where you start doing roster retention, transfer portals, things like that. Those are off season things that every professional sport. And look, let's face it, there's going to be money being paid to these athletes. They're getting paid now. So it's warping in that direction. You have to take the same approach, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think there is a track record of this type of calendar working. We see it in professional sports all the time, right? It's a set time period for all that stuff to happen, and I just think that until they do something like that, until they can fix the timing of the windows, it's going to be a problem, because that is, we watch teams get eliminated from the NCAA tournament, and then half the roster is gone in the portal 2 days later, and that's tough, right? Because it's putting a lot of pressure on the kids too. I think that's an underrated part of this is guys are playing, but they're also having to think about their future too, and it can be a distraction for them. And I don't even blame them for that. That's the NCAA's fault with this window that they've created, that they're putting pressure on everyone to do stuff in such an expedited way that it's unfair to everyone. I don't know that anyone really benefits from the way it's happening now, and if that isn't cause for change, I don't know what is.
John, always a pleasure. Really appreciate the time you gave us today.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. That's Jon Sauber, Center Daily Times. All right, we'll take a break. Brought to you by Sunbury Motors here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is, because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
When car repairs get difficult.
Well, I just don't know. Me neither.
We get good. Sunbury Motors. More than quality new and used cars, Sunbury Motors specializes in complicated auto repair diagnosis. They can handle intricate repairs and even complete auto body with service open Monday through Friday, 7 till 4. And Sunbury Motors has made simple repairs easy. Maintaining your vehicle is necessary. Finding the time to do it is difficult. Welcome to Sunbury Motors Quick Lane. Just walk in or call ahead. Relax in their remodeled waiting room with Wi-Fi, beverages, and snacks. While Sunbury Motors factory-trained techs take care of your oil change, tire alignments, brakes, and inspections. Quick Lane, 6:30 to 6, Monday through Friday, Saturday, 6:30 till 2. Sunbury Motors, Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury. And Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. We take the out of auto repair.
David Wilson on the show today. Bob Nightingale still to come on the show. What do we have tomorrow, Todd? I'm just asking.
Still working on that part.
Well, get the king on, obviously, with UConn playing tomorrow in women's basketball. We'll get a good half hour from him just on Paige Beckers. And then, just so you know, it's been arranged that BJ from West Shore Home is going to join us on Monday, okay, 1:30.
Perfect.
So got that all set up. And down the road, and this is way down the road, we will be doing a show from the U.S. Open Golf Championship in June. That is now all set.
Now we just have to figure out how to get my board to Pittsburgh.
Exactly. That's all we have to do. All right? That's all we have to do. All right? It was interesting as Rory McIlroy said, that suit guy isn't coming, is he?
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. Some of our insurance needs. And believe me, we don't just have one insurance need. I mean, very few of us would have one. And they handle all of it. They keep it organized. They make sure that you're fully insured. And they go to great lengths to make sure they save you money. Because the bottom line is customer service means everything to them. At Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury, go to purdyinsurance.com. It's just great people. They care. One quick note, the NIT championship game is tonight at Hinkle Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. And it's going to be, and this is what makes it of note to me personally, it'll be Cal Irvine, the Anteaters, against Tennessee Chattanooga for the title. What's interesting about it is that the head coach for Tennessee Chattanooga is Dan Earl. Danny did the former Nittany Lion, led Penn State to the 96 NCAA tournament as the point guard. You could always tell he had the ability that he was going to be an excellent coach. You could always tell that he was going to be an excellent coach. And he took the VMI, after being an assistant, took the VMI job, did some great stuff at VMI, which is a hard place to win. And then he took the Tennessee Chattanooga job. Mark Wharton, who was at Penn State for years, Mark is the athletic director now at Tennessee Chattanooga, or I guess they just call it Chattanooga now. So my apologies, but yeah, at Chattanooga. And Danny's done a great job on them. They went 15-3 this year in the Southern Conference and 28-9 overall. And I texted him last night, and he's like, hey, he basically, Danny said, look, Steve, I got great kids. That makes a big difference. They can score. They're averaging about 80 points a game. But that is tonight at 9 o'clock, and Danny will be on the sideline, and they won't be the favorite. I mean, I think Cal Irvine will be the favorite in the game. But let's see if Chattanooga can win it, because I want to see Danny Earl win. The Crown continues tonight with Central Florida against Cincinnati, and Villanova's against USC in the Crown tonight.
Who's coaching Villanova? It's still the interim guy, right?
Oh, yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin's, no, believe me, Kevin won't coach. You think he's going to coach him? Not right now.
It is Las Vegas.
Yeah. I mean, he's probably out there looking at guys. I mean, I don't blame him for that. Trying to get ready for something. But, yeah, I don't know who is coaching them. It's obviously the interim guy. I don't know who the interim guy is.
I was going to say I'm not sure they now I mean that wasn't the major part of the story. Obviously, when they fired Kyle.
Hey, for all we know, it's the janitor. I have no idea. I don't know. I hadn't really. I mean, when they accepted it, that was my first thought, and I didn't bother to take the time to look it up. That was my first thought when they accepted this, because you have to have in the tournament contractually 2 Big Ten teams, 2 Big 12 teams, and 2 Big East teams, because this is being run through Fox, and those 3 conferences happen to be covered by Fox. They have contracts with Fox, so you have to have 2 from each. Well, when the Big East thing came up, I thought, well, geez, I mean, Villanova, they have an interim coach. They're not going to play, right? Nope, they're playing.
It's Mike Nardi, by the way.
Mike Nardi. Okay, well, I know who Mike is. I know who Mike is. All right.
Speaking of former point guards.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. So USC's tonight. And, USC blew out Tulane by 29 points. I don't know. He got me beat on this whole thing. I don't know. Well, it was interesting because this is a year where the SEC has turned out some great basketball. It doesn't take a genius to say that. 70% of the starters in the SEC this year were seniors. But they've also invested the money in it, and that's where the revenue share part comes up. Look, I know that I completely appreciate the other sports, the fans. I completely appreciate the fans of other sports saying, in the revenue share, you're going to be paying our people, right? I get that part. I understand it. Because that's the sport you love. Whether it's women's volleyball, women's soccer, wrestling, softball, baseball, I completely appreciate that. Because that's the sport you love. It is obvious that football, everybody concedes. Whatever sport you love, the football has to have the lion's share of the money, excuse the pun. Okay? And that's everybody concedes that, because that is the one that makes the money. But this is where you have to separate your heart from your mind, in my opinion. The heart tells you, I want my sport in the revenue share to get X amount. And I completely, absolutely appreciate that. But the mind tells you something different. And the mind says it's a business. And so you have to make sure, and the SEC has done this, and certain programs in the Big Ten have done this, But you have to understand where your men's basketball has to sit financially in all this. You really only have, business-wise, again, business model, only two of your sports have a chance to turn a profit, football and men's basketball. If you can turn a profit, right, football is the primary profit driver exponentially. But if you can turn a profit in your men's basketball program to at least help out and supplement, it makes a big difference for an entire athletic department. And that's why you need to invest in it because of what's going on. And Penn State is in a different spot than an SEC school. Penn State is in a different spot, I think, than a lot of Big Ten schools. Penn State has great women's soccer. Penn State has great women's volleyball. Penn State has awesome, incredible, tremendous wrestling. All right? Penn State has great men's ice hockey. And each one of those sports has passionate fans that are behind it. Right? When you look at the SEC, right, they have passionate baseball fans. They have passionate softball fans. They have passionate women's gymnastics fans. But there is a thought process in the Southeastern Conference as to what needs to be prioritized. In other words, we'll make sure all of you get your money because we're going to be really good in these two sports, which will then open the door in a domino. And again, this kind of goes to the domino economic theory, right? We'll make money, the whole thing. I mean, let's face it, when you get into individual numbers, let me see here if I can call this up. When you get into individual numbers, about just NCAA distribution, okay? Okay? When you get into those numbers, okay, this would be the last one here, I guess. Hopefully I can get through this. Every time I get into it, it gets a little squirrely as to how it lets me in. I may have to. I've got the 24 one up here, but it won't quite get me through it. So I'll call the 23 one up. I know the numbers are going to be slightly different, but it's 90 pages worth of stuff where you climb through it. We talked about just an NCAA distribution number. Okay. And, for example, in the 23 report, Penn State ended up making, let's see, in football. Now, this is 23, all right? It's not 24 because I have trouble calling up the 24 report. Penn State in football, let's see, spent 58, 114. So that's 42-14. Okay. That's how much they spend? My apologies. They spent 58. Okay. That's 42-14. So it's a $62 million profit. Okay. All right. Men's basketball had a $3.6 million profit. 3.6. Just want to make sure I got that right. 3.5 million. Almost 3.6. Okay. Now this is in 23. Okay. Now they break it down after that. And, for example, things like are not included in this, but one of them is the NCAA distribution number. And we talk about the NCAA tournament, for example. And that's a big part of, getting yourself to a profit line. You're part of the NCAA, so you end up on the profit line. And, for example, when I tell people this, I think they're shocked by it. When you do tell them. But, for example, the NCAA distribution number for 24 for Penn State, I think for men's basketball, is $2.2 million. Okay? Well, what do you think the NCAA distribution was for? Again, let's take the best of the best, wrestling, right? And, they can't help their numbers. It is what it is. What do you think the number was, Todd?
49,000.
It was 48. People are like, what are you talking about? It can't be. That's because that TV deal is for every other sport. Is like you see, it's like I think it's $115 million, and because that's what it is. That's where you sit back and go, yikes. I mean, it ends up being spread out. There we go. Here's the 24 one. See, that's where it ends up being spread out in such a way that people don't get a lot of money from it. You just don't get, just even something as simple as that. Something as simple as that. Last year's ticket sales, okay? Ticket sales, $44.5 million for Penn State in football. Okay, men's ice hockey was second at $2.15 million. Men's basketball third, 1.8. Wrestling, 1.2. Okay. If you're wondering about women's volleyball, their ticket sales last year. Now this is through fiscal year 24. It's not the national championship year. Okay, because this goes through June. Was $205,000, and they were second to women's basketball at $209,000. Okay. So that's on the ticket sales part. Now, and remember, wrestling's ticket sales are based on the fact that they're wrestling most of the time in Rec Hall, the smaller venue. They're all sold out. Let's see. Now, the other part is that then you get to the NCAA distribution. Okay, the media rights part. Now, why is the media rights part put on the Penn State basketball line? Because guess what? When Fox, NBC, Peacock, and CBS do their media rights, they are for football and men's basketball. They are not for the other sports. Big Ten Network is a part of this, but even on the advertising part, if you watch any, for example, why is it Cliff Keen Wrestling is on every single commercial for the wrestling in the Big Ten? Quite simply, you don't see. Why don't you see Pepsi or Coca-Cola or anything like that? It's a different sales model. Okay. So here's the. Let's see. NCAA distribution. Last year, basketball got $1.9 million. Men's ice hockey got 17.3. 17,300. Okay? That's the tournament right there. Okay? That's the tournament. Then there's a conference distribution. Okay? Conference okay? Men's teams conference distribution, non-media, non-football bowl. Basketball, $1.1 million. Football, $4.2 million. They're the only two. See, it goes over and over again. Let's see, college football playoff, $7.8 million a year. It's a year ago. It's going to be more coming up, a lot more. Okay, but that's, I mean, when you start going through the lines of all this, right? Okay, sports camps do well. Okay, sports camps. You know what the wrestling sports camps bring in? The wrestling sports camps bring in more money than any other sports camp here. Wrestling is $413,000 in sports camp money. How about that? I mean, it's more than football. Football on this list here says $224. How about that? Okay. I mean, there's endowment money. I mean, the men's, you know, the men's ice hockey endowment money, $2 million. Yeah, because Terry endowed the program. Talk about making a difference. Let's see the women's ice hockey teams on here. I thought they had to do that too. No, it's a smaller amount. I'm not going to get into it. And you know, again, the ability to generate revenue, and not just, and you can generate more revenue in the sport. Okay. And let's see, in this particular year, to do revenue, about the same as the year before for football. See, when you start going through the numbers, it tells you why you want to win in everything. You want to win in everything. But there's a domino way to do this financially that you always have to keep in mind. That's why your football is critical to this in your revenue share. And that's why your men's basketball is going to be critical in your revenue share. And then you make sure your revenue share takes care of volleyball, takes care of wrestling, takes care of soccer, just as examples that are right there. And one of the biggest problems you have is for basketball, one of the biggest problems you have for men's basketball, athletic facilities, debt service, leases, and rental fee. They paid $95,000 last year in rental for the Jordan Center. Like, really?
That's the part of it that, since I started here, that still blows my mind, that the basketball has to pay for the Jordan Center.
Yeah, it's always, you know when I found that out? I did not realize when they were building it, like, oh, they're building the whole thing. And I was working at WPSX at the time, now WPSU TV. And, projects are given to me and I have to take care of them. And one of the ones that was given to me as the producer of it was they wanted me to do a promotional video on the opening of the Jordan Center and the economic impact it was going to have on the university in the area. Okay. Yeah, I can't remember how long the video was supposed to be, but there were a series of people I had to interview from athletic personnel and so forth. And then I was saying, you need to go over and you need to talk to this guy, Bernie Punt, over in what was then called Housing and Food Services. I said, okay. And we're in the meeting. I said, well, what do you want me to talk to him about? Why would I have to talk to somebody in Housing Food Services? All right, because I'm trying to figure out what questions should I be asking him and why am I interviewing him, right? And it was just a simple, question, so I knew what I was doing, right? And they said, well, they're actually the ones in charge of the building. I went, whoa, what? Hold on a second, what? What do you mean they're in charge of the building? What? I'm confused. So I thought athletics was in charge of the building. No, it's their building. I went, oh. So that's when I knew that there's going to be a little different arrangement here. I said, okay. I mean, I just went over and did what I was supposed to do.
Are other places like that?
I don't know. That's a really good question, Todd. I can't answer that. I don't know. It very well may be. I mean, for example, I don't know who runs or is in charge of Carver Hawkeye Arena. I don't know.
I'm just wondering if it's more the newer, when they built their newer arenas. Like, I can't imagine Duke's, the athletic program isn't in charge of Cameron Indoor at Duke.
Oh, well, like, for example, Rec Hall.
Yeah.
Athletics in charge of that building. So buildings like that, yeah. Like, I don't know, for example, at Ohio State, St. John Arena, they obviously were in charge of that. But the Schottenstein Center, Value City Arena, it very well may be the same arrangement. I don't know. Because of all the concerts and everything like that, they're the ones in charge of all that.